His wife noticed at first, not the forgetting, everyone forgets things. It was the way he'd walk into a room and just stop, stand there. Not confused exactly, more like he'd lost the thread of why he was there in the first place. She didn't say anything for months. He was 61, still working, still sharp in meetings, still the man she'd married. So she told herself it was stress, told herself it was the long hours, told herself a lot of things because the alternative was something she wasn't ready to name. By the time they named it, the disease had already been in his brain for over a decade. That's not a dramatic exaggeration. That is the clinical reality of Alzheimer's disease. The biological destruction begins 15, sometimes 20 years before the first symptom appears. The plaques build, the tangles form, the neurons die, and the person living inside that brain feels completely fine until one day they don't. Until one day they don't. And by then, the window where intervention could have made the biggest difference has already closed. Over 55 million people worldwide are living with dementia right now. Alzheimer's accounts for 60 to 70% of cases. In the United States alone, more than 6 million people are living with Alzheimer's. 1 in 3 seniors dies with it. It is the only cause of death in the top 10, with no way to prevent, cure, or even slow it significantly. At least that was the consensus until very recently. By 2050, the global number of dementia cases is projected to nearly triple, not because we're failing to treat it, but because we're living longer. Because we have spent decades looking for this disease in the wrong place, at the wrong time, using the wrong tools. Today we're going inside the brain. What Alzheimer's actually is, and what you can do right now to change the trajectory of your brain's future. Research from the last 12 months has fundamentally shifted what we thought we knew about when this disease begins. Stay with me, because this one is personal for almost everyone. To understand Alzheimer's, you first need to understand what a healthy brain actually looks like at the cellular level. Your brain contains roughly 86 billion neurons. Each one communicates through long, thin extensions called axons and dendrites, connected at junctions called synapses. Every thought is the result of signals firing across trillions of connections. The brain is not a hard drive. It is a living, constantly rewiring network where memories exist as patterns of connection. This rewiring ability, called neuroplasticity, is one of the brain's most extraordinary features. It retains capacity to grow. Tragically, this capacity for compensation is one of the reasons Alzheimer's hides so well. The brain adapts until it can't. Alzheimer's doesn't attack the brain randomly. It follows a path, a devastatingly consistent, well-mapped path. And it starts in a region most people have never heard of, the entorhinal cortex. It sits deep in the temporal lobe. Everything you experience has to pass through this relay. Every new memory you form travels through the entorhinal cortex first. It is the bottleneck, the single most important transfer point. And in Alzheimer's disease, it is where the destruction begins. New research from the University of California, published in 2025, found that the entorhinal cortex is disproportionately vulnerable to shape changes. New research found that this vulnerability may be one of the earliest measurable signs of Alzheimer's pathology, a physical structural change. The disease is already reshaping the architecture of the brain while the person is still living their normal life. But to understand why this happens, we need to talk about 2 proteins that under normal circumstances play essential roles in your brain. Every time your neurons fire, every thought, every sensation, they generate metabolic waste products, and amyloid beta is one of them. Sleep is the first and most underappreciated risk factor, and the research here is more alarming than most people realize. The brain's drainage system is clogging, and as it clogs, amyloid accumulates faster, and as amyloid accumulates, the inflammatory cascade intensifies. When it starts to misfold, changing its shape in a way that makes it sticky, and begins to clump together with other molecules into aggregates called oligomers. Large amyloid plaques accumulate in the spaces between neurons, physically disrupting the synaptic connections between cells. They trigger inflammation that, intended to protect, ends up causing collateral damage to healthy tissue. The neurons, damaged but not yet dead, begin to malfunction, firing incorrectly, failing to communicate properly. Scientists have shown that the brain's waste clearance pathways, called perivascular spaces, become enlarged and blocked. As the inflammatory cascade intensifies, the second protein enters the picture, tau. Inside every neuron, there is a network of tiny tubes called microtubules. Tau proteins are the ties that hold these tracks together. Tau becomes chemically altered through a process called hyperphosphorylation. It detaches. The microtubules begin to collapse and disintegrate. The detached, misfolded tau proteins begin to aggregate with other misfolded tau molecules, forming twisted rope-like structures called neurofibrillary tangles. The neuron can no longer feed itself, it can no longer communicate with its neighbors, its connections wither, and eventually it dies. The pathology propagates through the brain in a predictable anatomical pattern, starting in the entorhinal cortex, spreading to the hippocampus. Memory goes first because the hippocampus goes first. Language and reasoning follow, and finally, the basic functions of self-awareness. The pathology propagates moving outward into the association cortices that handle language, reasoning, and executive function. The amyloid plaques begin accumulating in the brain 15 to 20 years before the first cognitive symptom appears. 15 to 20 years. Throughout this entire process, the person feels nothing unusual. Their brain is compensating, masking the damage with its enormous reserve capacity. Researchers published findings in 2026 showing that a blood biomarker called pTau217 can be detected in the bloodstream years before plaques even show up on scans. The FDA cleared the first commercial blood test for Alzheimer's in 2025. This is not a minor incremental development, it is a potential turning point. A standard blood test changes the entire equation. It makes population-level screening conceivable. It opens the door to intervening during the long, silent phase. The old consensus that it's random and unstoppable is over. Alzheimer's has modifiable risk factors, and they are actionable today. Sleep is the first. During deep sleep, your brain activates the glymphatic system, a ventilation network that flushes toxic waste. When you sleep well, the glymphatic system runs efficiently, and amyloid is cleared before it can accumulate to dangerous levels. A 2026 study tracked thousands of older adults and found those with weaker daily rhythms were far more likely to develop dementia. Your brain is 2% of your body weight, but consumes 20% of your body's blood supply. It is extraordinarily dependent on blood delivery. High blood pressure damages small vessels, causing microinfarcts and white matter changes that correlate directly with cognitive decline. Some researchers have proposed calling Alzheimer's type 3 diabetes because of the overlap between impaired brain insulin and pathology. A landmark study from Mass General Brigham found that even modest physical activity measurably slowed both cognitive decline and the accumulation of amyloid in the brain over time. Exercise stimulates the production of BDNF, a protein that promotes the growth of new neural connections and even entirely new neurons. Exercise builds cognitive reserve, the brain's capacity to tolerate pathological damage before symptoms emerge, by strengthening neural networks. When the auditory system is impaired, the brain must work significantly harder to decode degraded sound signals, pulling cognitive resources away from memory. Hearing loss tends to lead to social withdrawal and isolation, both of which carry their own independent dementia risk. Social engagement is the fifth pillar. Chronic social isolation activates inflammatory pathways that overlap substantially with neuroinflammatory processes. A real conversation is one of the most cognitively demanding things humans do. Its absence allows those networks to weaken from disuse. Now, genetics. Rare familial Alzheimer's is deterministic, caused by specific mutations. This is only 5% of cases. The larger category involves APOE4. It's not a deterministic mutation, but a risk modifier that shifts the probability. APOE4 accelerates amyloid accumulation, impairs amyloid clearance, and increases neuroinflammation. Carrying it changes the risk landscape. Genetic testing for APOE status exists. For some, it's motivating. For others, it's anxious. Talk to your doctor about context. It looks like treating your sleep as the highest priority biological maintenance your body performs, 7 to 9 hours on a consistent schedule. It looks like knowing your blood pressure number and taking it seriously. Chronic mild hypertension over decades is not a minor issue. It looks like moving your body every single day, not when you feel like it, every day, because the benefits are dose-dependent and accumulate with habitual practice. It looks like addressing hearing loss rather than hiding it and staying socially connected, investing in relationships. Alzheimer's is not a disease of your 70s. It begins in your 40s and 50s, quietly, without a single symptom. The man whose wife noticed him stopping in doorways was 61 when they gave it a name. but the biology started when he was probably in his mid-40s. Share this video with someone whose family has been touched by this disease, and subscribe, because next week we go inside another condition. See you in the next one.